The two teenagers burst out laughing as the old man dropped his groceries on the pavement. "Careful, Grandpa," one sneered. "Those prune juices are a battlefield, huh?" But when a battered pickup truck pulled into the lot 10 minutes later, and 5 silent men stepped out in uniform, the laughter died faster than it started. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to like the video. Every Tuesday at 3 p.m. sharp, Lawrence Granger made his slow walk from the edge of town into Oak Hill Center. Everyone just called him Larry. No one called him friend. His route never changed. 3 cracked sidewalks, 2 street crossings without lights, and 1 stray mud he always stopped to greet. He never used a cane. His back was bent, but his steps were deliberate, calculated. The kind of gait that came from years of moving across dangerous ground. He lived in lot number 17 of Sycamore Trailer Park. Alone. His windows were always closed, blinds drawn, the air conditioner rattling even in fall. Kids whispered that he had no family, no phone, and no past. All they saw was a stiff, unsmiling old man with hands that shook and a stare that lingered too long. But Larry Granger noticed everything. He noticed when the new flag at City Hall was hung upside down. He noticed when the crossing guard skipped the corner near the gas station where the kids biked through. And he noticed the 2 teenagers long before he stepped out of Oak Hill Market. They were already there, perched like birds on the edge of the curb, loud, careless, and charged with the weightless arrogance of youth. One had a skateboard, chipped and scribbled with stickers. The other had a speaker slung from his shoulder, blasting a rap beat that seemed designed to disturb, not entertain. Inside the store, Larry had gone through his usual routine. Carton of eggs, 2 cans of no-beans chili, 1 bottle of prune juice, 3 $1 scratch tickets, always the same numbers, never any winners. Jen, the cashier, offered her usual half-smile. She never asked questions. Larry appreciated that. As he stepped out, plastic bag looped tightly in one hand, the taller boy stood abruptly, pretending to stretch, and accidentally bumped into him. The bag dropped. A can rolled into the street. The eggs hit first. One burst. "Whoa," the boy mocked, laughing loudly. "Chili down. Chili down." Larry didn't react. He crouched slowly, knees popping, and began gathering the items without looking at them. His hands shook slightly, but not from fear. The second boy grinned. "Hey, old-timer, you know where you are? Think you're still in the jungle, huh? You gonna call in a chopper for evac?" That was when Larry straightened, and the sun hit his collar just right. The boys went quiet when they saw it. A scar. Thick. Twisted. Pale against weathered skin. It ran diagonally across the left side of his neck, disappearing under the shirt line. It wasn't a surgical scar. It was the kind of mark that told a story even silence couldn't hide. Larry looked at neither of them. He gathered the cracked egg, now leaking yolk through the thin plastic, stood upright, and began walking again, slow, methodical, back toward the direction of the trailer park. The boys snorted, trying to shake the discomfort. One kicked the broken can into the gutter. But 10 minutes later, they weren't laughing anymore. A battered Ford F-150 rolled slowly into the lot and parked near the boys. No music. No rush. The engine idled for a moment before shutting off. Then came the doors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 men stepped out. All older. Not elderly. Just seasoned. They wore jeans, flannel, old boots. One had a limp. One had a Marine's cap. Another wore a denim jacket with a faded patch of an airborne division. They didn't speak. They just stood, shoulders squared, back straight, looking at the boys, looking through them. And just like that, the silence grew loud. The same kind of silence you hear in the last second before a storm breaks. What would you do if your grandfather was mocked like this? If you believe honoring the quiet warriors among us matters, type "never forget" in the comments. The taller teenager stood first, half a head taller than the others, but thinner, nervy, built more for deflection than confrontation. Can we help you?" he said, forcing a smirk. "You guys looking for the senior center?" None of the men responded. Not at first. They stood side by side, not quite in formation, but positioned deliberately, knowingly, like men who had once cleared perimeters together. Their eyes didn't flicker. Their weight was evenly distributed. Hands open, relaxed, but not soft. The youngest of them, a man in his late 50s with a shaved head and tattooed knuckles, finally stepped forward. His voice was even, casual. "You two gave Larry a hard time?" The boy blinked. "Who?" The man nodded toward the road. "Old guy. Bag of groceries. Scar on his neck. Walked off like he didn't hear you," which he did. The skateboard kid laughed nervously. Oh, come on. We didn't mean nothing. Just messing around. Messing, the man repeated. Tell me, when you mess with something, what exactly are you trying to fix? The boy didn't answer. Another man stepped forward. Taller, broader, his t-shirt stretched over thick forearms. His face was sunburned and serious. That man you pushed? Saved 4 of us. March 1971. Firebase ripcord. You don't even know what that is, do you? The second boy opened his mouth, then closed it. The speaker went quiet on his shoulder. The man continued. It's where they sent men to die. And some of us did. The rest came back because one man dragged bodies through mud, under fire, across wire, and into a chopper that wasn't supposed to land. He didn't talk about it then, the first man added. And he doesn't talk about it now. But we do. From across the lot, someone was recording now. A woman standing beside her car, phone half-raised, catching it all without saying a word. We're not here to scare you, the tall man said. We're not even here for an apology. He looked at the second boy directly. We're here so you remember that some men don't need to shout to be heard. The boys didn't move. One swallowed. The other looked at the ground. Behind them, the store clerk, Jen, stepped out from the front doors, arms crossed. She didn't say anything either, just nodded slightly to the group of men. Then came a voice. Soft. Raspy. You came. Everyone turned. Larry was there. He stood at the edge of the lot, grocery bag replaced by a small cooler in one hand and a folded flag in the other. His posture wasn't defensive. He looked calm, tired. The man with the tattooed knuckles stepped forward and offered a casual 2-finger salute. Always, LT. Larry chuckled once. Don't call me that. Not anymore. Another man, the one with the Marine Corps hat, pointed at the kids. They yours now? Larry looked at them, long and hard, then nodded, once. They're not ready yet, he said. But they might be someday. If you've ever seen someone step in, not with anger, but with honor, just to stand beside the right thing, type dignity speaks quietly below. The group of men fell into loose conversation then. Larry set down his cooler. From it, he pulled 5 glass bottles, root beer, the kind with metal caps. One by one, he handed them out. No speeches. No explanation. The boys were still standing, silent. Until Larry turned to them and said, You too. They flinched. Come by tomorrow, he said. After school. For what? One asked, guarded. To paint. Paint what? Larry nodded toward the brick wall behind the market. The boy followed his gaze and saw the peeling ghost of a mural. It used to be a memorial, Larry said. Names wore off. Color faded. But it's still there, under the dirt. You want us to fix it? I want you to clean it, he corrected. The fixing comes later. Have you ever known someone like that? Someone who didn't demand respect, but made you want to give it? Share their story in the comments. They deserve to be remembered. By 3:45 the next afternoon, the 2 teenagers, Jake and Ramon, as Larry had quietly learned, stood outside the Oak Hill Market with nothing but a spray bottle, a wire brush, and the kind of shame that takes a while to wear off. Larry hadn't told them what to do. He didn't need to. The wall was waiting. The brick was old, sun-baked, cracked in places. Once, it had held a mural, the town's tribute to veterans lost in foreign wars, but years of rain, neglect, and indifference had reduced it to a gray smear with faint outlines and the occasional ghost of a name. Jake sprayed, scrubbing hard, until his wrist ached. Ramon worked slower, tracing the bricks with gloved fingers, watching his shapes emerge like bones beneath sand. What is this? Ramon finally asked. Larry, seated on a folding chair nearby, didn't look up from the notebook in his lap. It's where we put the names. Jake paused. Names of who? Larry met his eyes. Men who didn't come home. A silence passed. Heavy. Real. How many? Larry tapped the notebook. 17. From this town. Jake's face changed. I didn't know. No, Larry said quietly. You didn't want to know. They worked for another hour. And with each patch they uncovered, more of the mural returned, fragmented colors, old unit patches, call signs. Beneath a layer of soot, a single word began to reappear in blue stencil. Honor. That evening, as the sun lowered and the sidewalk cooled, a small crowd gathered. No invitation. Just word of mouth. Parents came. Teachers. A few veterans who hadn't been seen in months. The town librarian. The mailman. Even the sheriff, who leaned on the hood of his cruiser and watched in silence. One woman approached Larry as he packed up his chair. My father's name is on that wall, she said, voice trembling. He was never listed in the newspaper. It was just quiet. Until now. Larry didn't reply. He just nodded and handed her the notebook. Check the spelling, he said. I never trusted my penmanship. She opened to a page labeled Confirmed Losses, Oak Hill. Each entry was written by hand. Name, rank, year, last known operation. Some had notes. Others didn't. She ran her fingers over one. Private Edward W. Hatcher, she whispered. My dad. Larry didn't say, I remember him. Didn't say he bled out in my lap. Didn't say we were 19. Just boys. He just nodded once, eyes full of things too heavy for the hour. If you believe those who sacrifice deserve their names spoken aloud, type never forget in the comments. Behind them, Ramon and Jake sat on the curb, exhausted, covered in brick dust, too tired to pretend they weren't changed. Jake looked back at the wall, then at Larry. Why didn't anyone fix this before? Larry's answer came slow, measured, because sometimes people wait for permission, or a leader, or a reason. He leaned on his cane, eyes scanning the names already visible. But the ones who served, they didn't wait. Later that night, under a dull street lamp, Jake returned alone. He had a notebook, a cheap one. Inside, in thick black marker, he wrote one sentence across the first page. We are the next caretakers. Have you ever witnessed a place or story come back to life, not with money or speeches, but by hands and dust and eyes that finally saw? Tell us what you'd restore in your hometown if you could. 2 days later, something appeared on the wall. It wasn't a tag. It wasn't graffiti. It was a name painted in clean black letters, outlined in white, deliberately placed beneath the word honor. Granger, Lawrence J., 1st Battalion, 327th Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne. Vietnam, 1969 to 1971. No one saw who added it. Not Ramon. Not Jake. Not Jen from the store. Not the veterans who had started coming by each evening to nod quietly, share a flask, and run their fingers over old names like Braille for ghosts. But it was there. And it wasn't Larry who painted it. When asked, he just said, wasn't me. But he didn't deny it belonged there. That afternoon, the high school history teacher, Mr. Barnes, walked to lot number 17 in Sycamore Park. He had a folder under one arm and the look of someone not easily shaken, but his hands trembled slightly when Larry opened the door. Can I help you? I think I've been teaching the wrong version of this town. Larry raised an eyebrow. That's so. I didn't know about Firebase Ripcord, Barnes said, stepping onto the porch. Didn't know about Hill 902. Or the fact that you held a perimeter alone for 6 hours with a busted radio and a Browning that overheated twice. Larry said nothing. Barnes continued. I made a call to an old friend. He has access to archived field records. I wanted to understand who we almost forgot. He opened the folder. Inside were 6 grainy photographs, each black and white, each featuring a man in fatigues. One of them showed a much younger Larry, bareheaded, soaked, jaws set, kneeling beside a crater with another man's boots poking from the mud beside him. Barnes laid the photos on the porch rail. You saved them. All of them. And then you came back and lived like none of it mattered. Larry looked down at the images. Long quiet. It wasn't about me, he said finally. Never was. If that's true, then why's your name the only one not listed on the Oak Hill Veterans Monument outside the courthouse? Larry didn't answer, but his eyes moved toward the far horizon, where the tree line blurred in summer haze, toward a place the town didn't know held more weight than any bronze plaque ever could. You lost someone, Barnes said, quieter now. Larry nodded once. Many. No. I mean someone different. The silence deepened. And then Larry said it. Corporal Avery Dunn. Barnes blinked. That name's not in the field reports. No, Larry said, because he wasn't supposed to be there. He stepped inside for a moment, returned with a worn envelope. Inside was a photograph, 2 men smiling in front of a canvas tent, holding up a cardboard sign that read Oak Hill or Bust. One was clearly Larry. The other had dark skin, kind eyes, and wore a helmet too big for his head. Dunn was from the next town over, Larry explained. Drafted 2 weeks before me. We ended up in the same unit by accident. Same patrol. Same mission. Only one of us came back. He handed Barnes the photo. I promised his mother I'd tell his story, but she died before I got home. For a long time, neither man spoke. And then Barnes said, what if we wrote it now? Larry looked at the wall down the road, then at the photograph, then back at the notebook still sitting by his porch chair. If we write it, he said softly, we write all of it. The mistakes too. Especially the mistakes, Barnes agreed. If you've ever held onto a promise for someone who never got to keep theirs, type respect in the comments. That night, Ramon returned to the wall again, this time with his father, a man who never spoke of his own service. But when he saw the mural, he reached out and whispered a name no one else could hear. Jake brought his sister. She didn't understand the history, but she brought paintbrushes. And the town librarian came too. She had a crate of yellowed news clippings and typed obituaries from wars past. She didn't speak much, but she had everything they needed to remember what they had forgotten. Larry watched from the porch. Not like a commander. Not like a teacher. Just like a man whose silence had finally found the ears willing to hear it. Have you known someone like that? Someone who waited for the world to catch up to their quiet truth? Tell us how you finally heard them. By the end of the week, the mural wasn't just a wall anymore. It had become a place. A meeting point. A pause in the town's rhythm. A place where conversations happened in half-whispers, and names were spoken aloud not out of ceremony, but out of sudden, unexpected reverence. It started with a bench. An older man named Ted, who used to run the local hardware store, brought it down from his garage, said it had been his late brother's fishing bench. Repainted it. Set it right in front of the wall. Didn't ask for permission. Then came the lamplight. Installed by a volunteer electrician who claimed he just happened to have a solar post light lying around. It cast a warm glow over the names, so even at night, they wouldn't fade. Then someone left a folded flag. Then a little wooden cross. Then a single, handwritten note. You helped bring my father home. Thank you for the extra years. Larry saw none of this immediately. He spent most mornings in the same folding chair on his porch, a dog-eared book open on his lap, though he rarely turned the pages. One afternoon, Jen from the market stopped by. She carried a box, small, taped shut, addressed to L. Granger. I found this in the back of the stockroom, she said. Been there a while. Must have gotten delivered and forgotten. Looks official. Larry opened it slowly. Inside was a frame. Within it, yellowing parchment and a patch. His discharge papers. Honorable. A second envelope was tucked behind the frame. Inside, a typewritten letter. He read it once. Then again. His hands tightened slightly. What is it? Jen asked. A letter I thought I'd burned years ago. She waited. Larry looked at her. It's from a man named Captain Wheeler. He died 2 weeks after writing it. Said he nominated me for a medal. Said I'd never know if it went through. Jen pointed to the bottom of the box. Larry peeled back the last layer of packing paper. There it was. A silver star. No ceremony. No speech. Just mailed to him. Quietly. Like the war had finally remembered. If you believe those who serve shouldn't have to wait decades for acknowledgement, type shame in the comments to stand with them. That evening, Larry went to the mural for the first time since his name appeared. Jake and Ramon were there, both now unofficial custodians of the wall. They looked up when he arrived, startled, but didn't speak. Larry held out the medal. I want it sealed into the wall, he said. Jake blinked. Like, inside it? Yes. Why? Because I don't need it, Larry said. But they might. He gestured toward the other names. The ones who didn't come home. So they did it. Mixed concrete. Cut a pocket behind the name Granger, Lawrence J. Sealed the silver star inside. No ceremony. No applause. Just an act. The next morning, people noticed. And somehow, they knew not to ask what had been placed behind the stone. They just stood longer. Looked deeper. If this makes you angry, type respect in the comments. Later that week, an anonymous donor delivered 20 blank plaques to the city hall. Each one carried a name from the notebook Larry had once guarded like a secret. Within days, a second wall was planned, this time behind the library. A memorial expansion. Student volunteers signed up. One class even asked if they could write essays on the lives behind the names. And slowly, without a parade, without a headline, the town of Oak Hill changed. The boys who mocked Larry started showing up early. Not because they had to. Because they wanted to. Jake wrote a short poem. Ramon drew a mural sketch with faces, not just names. And the history teacher, Mr. Barnes, submitted Larry's story for an oral history project sponsored by the State Veterans Commission. They called it, The Ones We Almost Forgot. If you've ever watched a town shift quietly, steadily, because someone finally listened, share your moment in the comments. These changes matter. By the second Monday of August, the town of Oak Hill had grown used to its new ritual. Every afternoon, just before sunset, a small group would gather at the wall. No announcements, no flyers. Just people showing up. Teachers, store clerks, veterans in denim jackets, a teenager or two. Occasionally a mother with a child too young to understand why they stood there. Larry stopped going. Not because he didn't care. Because it had become something bigger than him. He watched from his porch most days. Watched as Jake led cleanings, as Ramon drafted a new section of murals showing silhouettes, not heroes, not soldiers, just men walking side by side into fog. And then, on the third Tuesday of the month, a black sedan pulled into lot number 17. No markings. No plates. Larry was on the porch. The driver stepped out, tall, lean, gray beard, military posture softened by years but unmistakable. He carried a manila folder. "Granger," he said. Larry didn't stand. "Depends who's asking." The man smiled faintly. "Thomas Avery Dunn. Lieutenant, retired. U.S. Army. Son of Corporal Avery Dunn." Silence fell between them like a door slamming shut in the wind. Larry stared. "You look like him." "So I've been told," Thomas said. "May I sit?" Larry motioned to the other chair. They didn't speak for a long time. Just the wind and the low hum of summer cicadas. Finally, Thomas opened the folder and pulled out a yellowing envelope. "This was written in 1972. By you." Larry stiffened. "My mother kept it. Never mailed it. Said she was waiting for you to bring it in person. I never could. She knew. Said she didn't blame you." Thomas handed him the envelope. Larry turned it over. His own handwriting. "To the family of Avery Dunn." His throat tightened. "She told me about you," Thomas continued. "Said my father always wrote home about one man, the tall, quiet one from Oak Hill who never left anyone behind." Larry swallowed hard. "I did leave him." "No," Thomas said softly. "He volunteered to cover the exit. He made that call. Not you. She said if you survived, you'd carry him home a different way." Larry looked up, eyes shining. "I tried." "You did. If you've ever held someone's name inside your heart because the world never gave them space, write it in the comments. Just their name. That's enough." Thomas reached into his coat again, pulled out a second item. A purple heart. "My father's. I wanted you to have it. He earned it. But he said if he didn't make it, you should hold it. You were the last thing he trusted." Larry took it, held it in both hands. The weight was unimaginable. "I don't deserve this." "You don't need to," Thomas said. "You carried enough already." Later that evening, they walked together to the mural. Not to place the medal, just to stand. Jake was there. So was Ramon. And Barnes, the teacher. When they saw Larry and Thomas together, no one spoke. Thomas stepped forward and pointed to a blank space beneath the newly painted silhouette of four figures walking toward a rising sun. "May I?" he asked. Jake nodded. Thomas took a brush. "Black paint. One stroke at a time. Dunn, Avery, Corporal. Vietnam, 1971. He stepped back, set the brush down, and saluted the name. If this moment brought someone to mind, someone who never made the news but made all the difference, type "never forget" in the comments. Later that night, Larry sat on his porch in the dark, metal still resting in his palm. He didn't cry, didn't speak, just rocked gently in his chair, watching as moths circled the porch light and the wind carried the sound of a distant train through the hills. And for the first time in over 50 years, the air didn't feel so heavy. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. Larry got mail. Real mail. Not government envelopes or utility bills. A thick manila package with no return address. Just the words Oak Hill High School, History Department scrawled in blue ink. Inside were 16 essays. Handwritten. Typed. Some on line paper. Others printed from school computers. They were titled things like "The Wall That Spoke," "What I Didn't Know About My Town," and "My Grandfather's Silence." Barnes had given the class a simple assignment. Find someone in town whose story hasn't been told, and tell it. Most of the students had gone home and discovered someone, an uncle who never talked about Korea, a mother's cousin who stopped wearing short sleeves after Fallujah, a neighbor who kept a box of medals under their bed and a bottle of whiskey by the window. Larry read them all, one by one. By the time he got to the 6th letter, he stopped rocking in his chair. By the 9th, he put down the coffee. By the last, his hands were folded in his lap. He looked out across the yard, toward the mural. The colors had faded just slightly from the late summer sun, but the names were still there. Every one of them. That evening, he didn't go to the wall. He went to the library. Walked slowly, his legs stiff but purposeful. Inside, he found Barnes at a table, sorting through books on Vietnam and Afghanistan. "I want to do something," Larry said. Barnes looked up. "You already have." "No. I want to hold a night. A gathering. Not speeches. No microphones. Just stories. For anyone who served. Anyone who lost someone. Anyone who never got to say what they needed to say. Barnes leaned back in his chair. I'll book the town hall. Within 48 hours, flyers appeared across Oak Hill. Handwritten, taped to gas pumps, barber shop windows, telephone poles. Stories from the quiet ones, Oak Hill veterans speak. One night only. No politics. No cameras. Just voices. Everyone welcome. The hall filled quickly. By 6:50 p.m., every folding chair was taken. By 7:05, people were standing in the back. Larry stood at the front, not on a stage, just beside a folding table with a thermos of coffee and a stack of paper cups. He didn't give a speech, just said, "Tell what you want. Or don't. You don't owe us anything, but you might owe it to yourself." And then he stepped aside. The first man up was in his 70s. Didn't say his name. He just told about a boy from Pennsylvania who threw himself onto a tripwire in '68. The next was a woman. Iraq, 2005. A medevac pilot who hadn't flown since. Then came a Marine. Then a nurse. Then a man in a suit who'd never worn a uniform but whose father had disappeared into Laos in 1972 and never came home. Each story landed like a quiet hammer, soft, but unstoppable. Larry didn't speak again that night. He just listened. Sat in the third row, arms folded, nodding at the end of every testimony like a judge with no gavel but all the weight. If you've ever carried a story you didn't know how to share, or helped someone carry theirs, type Dignity Speaks quietly in the comments. Afterward, the crowd lingered. People hugged. Some cried. Others just nodded, like the act of showing up had been enough. Jake and Ramon were there, two sitting side by side, listening. Jake had a notebook on his lap. Ramon had started sketching again, this time not a mural, but individual portraits. Faces half in shadow, half in light. One drawing stood out. Larry, drawn from memory. No embellishment. Just lines, weight, and tired eyes that still watched everything. He handed it to Larry at the end of the night. "I don't want to hang it," Larry said. "I want it sealed behind the wall. With the others." "Why?" "Because I'm just one piece. This belongs to the whole." If you've ever seen someone turn their pain into a place others can rest, share how they did it. Because those stories don't just heal, they build. It happened without warning. No press release. No announcement. Not even a post on the town's Facebook page. Just a whisper that started in the library and moved down Main Street, through the auto shop, the firehouse, the grocery store, and finally into the quietest corners of Oak Hill, like something remembered all at once. Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Larry stepped outside his trailer, planning to walk to the mural like he always did. But he didn't make it more than 10 steps before he noticed something different. Silence. But not empty silence. Held silence. A kind the earth itself seemed to be holding its breath for. He followed the street. People were gathered. Hundreds. Not packed like a crowd, but stretched through the town, along sidewalks and doorways, on porches, each holding something small. A name. A photo. A folded paper. Some carried candles. Some wore jackets with old patches on the sleeves. Some just stood with their hands over their hearts. The mural had been cleaned again. Fresh coats of protective sealant. New light fixtures. And something more. In the grass before the wall was a rectangular block, just set into the ground. Smooth granite. Bare at first glance, until you walked closer and read the etching. To the ones who carried others. And never asked to be carried in return. There was no list of names. No ranking. Just the emblem of Oak Hill, carved small in one corner, and below it. Dedicated in honor of L. Granger and all the quiet ones. Larry stood motionless. Jake and Ramon came up beside him, not saying a word. Behind them, the school marching band had assembled. But they didn't play a song. They just stood at attention. Until one lone trumpet began to play. Not taps. Not the anthem. Just a soft, clear melody, old, familiar, filled with ache. After it ended, the mayor stepped forward. A woman not known for speeches or ceremony or even showing up unless something was broken. She carried a key. Small. Rusted. Attached to a single tag. Firehouse Room 2B. "It's not much," she said. "But it's yours." Larry looked at her, puzzled. "It's a classroom. Empty for years. But we thought maybe." She hesitated. Jake finished her thought. "A place to talk. Or not talk. To meet. To remember. We'll call it the Granger Room." Larry didn't reply. Didn't move. He simply reached out and took the key. If you've ever witnessed someone be honored not for what they asked, but for what they never said, they just stood and kept doing good anyway, type respect in the comments. That night, The town square stayed lit until dawn. No fireworks, just candles and lanterns. At some point, someone started reading names aloud, slowly, one by one. And someone else added a new name after each one. Remembered. Private Hatcher. Remembered. Captain Riley. Remembered. Corporal Dunn. Remembered. By the time they said, Sergeant Granger, the entire square answered as one. Remembered. The next morning, Larry unlocked room 2B. It smelled like chalk and thyme. He placed a single item inside, a small wooden box. Inside it, the Purple Heart, the folded letter, and one photo, two boys grinning beside a sign that said Oak Hill or Bust. He closed the lid, locked it, sat by the window as the sun rose. And for the first time in half a century, he felt it. Not relief, not pride, but rest. Because finally, the town had whispered back. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let YouTube promote stories of kindness.